What's up, everybody? Derek Lambert, MythVision host. I have a special guest, and I hope everybody smashes that like button. If you're into mythology, if you love understanding the human plight and why we told stories to begin with, what are these stories about, all the good stuff, I'll tell you, my guest today is the man with the plan. I tell you, Jon F White. Welcome back, my brother.
How do you do, young Derek?
I'm doing. I've got
looking good. You're looking good, I must admit. The Florida sun is doing you well.
Yeah, look, man, I had anxiety, like I told you, I don't know, half a year ago, learning how to live with changes in life, all sorts of stuff, but also the sun is shining pretty hard down here. So I'm not going to lie, like when the sun comes out and it's beaming, there is a change in the air. I think nature takes its toll and humans are there for the ride. We either ride it or get defeated by it. So I'm rocking with nature right now, enjoying the summer here in Florida. And how are you where you're at?
This is England. It rains, and when it isn't raining, it's cloudy, and when it's not cloudy, it rains again. So yes, if you can explain what the sun is to me, I'd appreciate that. So, but it's okay here. Everything's good. Just been on a holiday or vacation with my children. Just come back, and looking forward to a productive few months on my YouTube channel.
Absolutely, we had some great videos you and I did together in person.
Yes,
some high quality production, really great deep dives, and with the limited amount of time you were able to come over and spend, and it was a good amount of time. Don't get me wrong, it was hours. But we did a lot. I think we were very productive for that amount of time. If we had more time, and I didn't feel like you were gonna like lose your brains are gonna fall off your head by the end of the one day. You see how hard we went in one day, like how much we did.
Yeah, totally unprepared, but not. Yeah, we were just off top of our heads. Yeah,
absolutely. And I'm calling, cows bulls and all this fun stuff, and you're over here going, no, that's a cow, or no, that's a bull. I can't remember which.
Oh.
Yeah, it's got horns. So I wanted to talk to you about dragons more in depth. Everybody who watches MythVision for a while, we've come across what the Bible talks about, Yam, the sea monster type thing, this Tiamat, character. And, we know Genesis kind of harps at the word Tehom it's etymologically related, and it's dealing with chaos and all that. So we really do want to go back in time and then maybe trace it with examples and images, if we can pull up some, to talk about when dragons were gods and what, we think of dragons. Some people might watch this and really go, no, I really believe there were real fire-breathing dragons and stuff. We could discuss some of that as well. We covered some of that in another video, but someone might be watching that didn't watch that video, and we can go into it. So enough of me rambling. Where do you want to begin?
We begin at the beginning. We'll begin 70,000 years ago, if you want to talk dragons, because 70,000 years ago is where we first see evidence or potential evidence of a dragon, but not a real dragon. This is a dragon ritual site. What I'll do is I'll try and share my screen for you guys, so
please.
You can see a picture.
Okay, while you're pulling that up real quick, go subscribe to Crecganford. Everybody who is watching YouTube here on MythVision, Jon is my friend. Jon, he's been there for years. I love this guy. We've met in real life. We've met on the internet. And I'll tell you, he has such a great, insightful resource for people who want to understand mythology. Sometimes I have ideas and I'll run them by him and he's like, nope. And here's why. And, it's not to gotcha. It's just, here's what the latest, greatest of the scholars are saying about this. And here's why. And you're not just condemning, you're actually out here to give good insight. So I hope people will subscribe to that and also check out folkloredatabase.com if you really want to trace a lot of the roots to these myths and where they come from geographically all across the globe. Anything else you want to mention about this?
No, it's free to use. It's supported by my patrons and YouTube members, and it's used by hundreds of universities across the world, thousands of scholars and students and academics to trace narratives in mythology, folklore, and the social sciences. It's a highly used and valuable tool. And I thank everybody who supports me in my work to make this.
Awesome. All right, John. Sorry, I had to get that one out of the way there.
There we go. So I'm going to take you to the southern part of Africa and Botswana. And there is this cave there called Rhino Cave. And in Rhino Cave is this stonework. Now, you might need a slight bit of imagination, but that looks like a serpent or a snake. I hope you agree, Derek, or this is going to be a short podcast.
That or it's a phallus. I'm kidding. So I can definitely see. I wish I could show my my. What you said? It's a rhino cave.
Rhino Cave is called Rhino Cave.
So let me see, because I wish there's a way to crop in. I don't know. Can you? You could zoom in, right? So
yes,
bottom right. Yeah. Okay. So zoom in some. Right on the left, I see the mouth. It looks like a mouth. Yes. The lines, the eye at the top. Yep. And that's a long snake.
It's a long snake going, and this is, as tall as a human. If a human stood next to it, it'll be about the height. So, 1.5 to 2 meters tall, or sort of 6 feet in American numbers. So there's this snake, and beside it, we have found various broken stone tools, which in the ground look like they've been there for, say, around 70,000 years, because we can't actually tell when the snake was carved or made or shaped, because that's pretty impossible. But from the things we see in the ground around it and their dates, we assume that they were put there at the same time as the snake was ritualized. And there's been experiments done with lighting and the like. So if you if torches are lit at night, it's hard to see here. I can load another picture actually. I did that one. Let me zoom in.
Yeah, I actually found that one on Google too just now.
Yeah. So this one, you can see all these holes, carved holes in the snake, and when light shines, they look like scales. So, and there's actually a passageway behind it where they believe probably some kind of religious figure. I'll put it back in quotes because religion is a weird thing at this point in time in human history. May have been behind listening or making noises or adding to the atmosphere of the performance of the ritual.
Wow.
So absolutely fascinating. So we have this snake, and so we think it's 70,000 years ago, and there is ritual behavior happening with it. So why is that? Why 70,000 years ago are people looking at this snake? What could this snake be? Well, if I remember my slides correctly, I'm going to wank to this slide. This is a painting found not too far away. It's in a cave. It's found in the early 19th century, if I remember correctly. And it shows a ritual with a serpent. Now, I do have a high contrast version of that image. And if you look at it, you see in the middle, there's someone. Let me zoom into this person because it's very interesting. This person here in the middle of the screen has got stuff coming out of his nose, probably having a nosebleed. Now, we're not entirely sure what is going on here, but there are thoughts that perhaps they've been bitten by a snake and the poison has thinned the blood and they're having nosebleeds. Perhaps there's something going on, some ecstatic ritual. The fact that legs are spread around in this image suggests there's dancing and painting. Now, this image is definitely not 70,000 years old, but it's certainly a good few hundred years old and shows a big serpent in there. And we're lucky enough that the people who found this were on an expedition, and the guide was able to tell them the story that was associated with it. You can stop sharing this whenever you want.
Okay.
And I'll tell you the story. So the story goes that there's this giant serpent, and when the earth was first made, this giant serpent slithered through the earth and created rivers and mountains as it slithered, pushed soil to one side and the like, and in effect brought water to the land and life came. And so in a way they see the snake as a bringer of life. It is a good thing. And so that is what we think is going on. There's some celebration of life and happiness, and why people are having nosebleeds, we still have no idea. But there are some things, we see behaviors, ritual behaviors, but we really can't say much more about them. If anybody says anything else about them, they're just guessing, really, at this point. Now, what is interesting is that this is 70,000 years ago. We see this snake, and perhaps this story and this ritual is associated with that. But if we go to the next oldest place on Earth where we see sort of human civilization, that's Australia, which has been populated since about 60,000 years ago. And there we have the First Nation Australians, and they have a story of a rainbow serpent. So this snake is called the rain snake in Africa, but they have the rainbow serpent. And the rainbow serpent, guess what it does? On a new world, it slithers around, it pushes soil aside, creates rivers and mountains, and brings water to the land, and life appears. Now, that could just be coincidence.
And just so I want to bring up some examples
as
you're like, if there's something that stands out, I just put Africa rainbow serpent. Is there like
Australia? This is Australia, the rainbow serpent.
Okay.
And the Milky Way is a really good example of that. If you've got a picture of the Milky Way, I've probably got one.
Is it this one?
Yeah, we need one. That is also the rainbow serpent. But I've shared a picture. If you put that, you can see my screen.
Of
the Milky Way.
Okay, let me stop sharing.
So there, if you look at the Milky Way, there's different imagery and symbolism associated with that, but one is the rainbow serpent. It covers the whole sky.
Interesting.
And this snake, brings water to the land. And some of the stories today, because they're all various versions, there are some versions that say the snake warns humans not to destroy the animals, otherwise the humans will be destroyed and they won't be brought back to life.
Interesting. Is this also like, I went to Wikipedia, found this. So there's a kind of...
that's another version, like the Milky Way, perhaps.
Okay.
It's hard to know for sure.
Gotcha.
But certainly, there are various cultures that consider the Milky Way a snake. There are some that consider it a milky substance, but that's a far more modern story, and we can get to that maybe if time allows, because that could blow your mind where we end up with that.
Okay.
So we have this story of a large serpent carving out the land, using water to bring life. Everybody happy for it. Okay, really great.
Okay.
Then something happens. But we're not too sure what happens, but we start seeing the next oldest stories we think are in Asia, because of how humans migrated out of Africa down to Australia, but then we see sort of them going into Asia and then back into Europe.
Can you give us dates just so we are tracking you a little?
So this is sort of after 60,000 years, 55,000 years. Humans left Africa maybe 200,000 years ago, but the population of humans or modern humans left Africa probably around 55 to 60,000 years ago, and that population basically made every other population extinct. So there is no trace of any earlier human than that set of humans that left at 55, 60,000 years ago. Some went into Europe, some went into Asia, and some went to Australia. The ones went to Australia almost straight away. They did breed with Neanderthals once, and they have that in their DNA. The humans that stuck around bred with Neanderthals twice, and we see that in the DNA, so we can tell a difference on timescales when humans migrated. Some went to Europe, some went to Asia. The ones in Europe then disappeared, and the ones in Asia went back and filled in the gap. So humans are always moving and migrating. There's no sort of one-way system here, but I'm just giving you a broad overview in a book that should be like 10,000 pages long if we're going to explain it.
Right. I just think this comment's funny.
Anybody can use any symbol they want in my book. You can label it whatever you want. It doesn't matter. I'm talking about particular cultures. The First Nation Australian culture has a rainbow serpent, and it is a benevolent being.
Gotcha.
So we get to Asia, and that's probably around. It could be any time from 50 to 30,000 years, certainly up to maybe 15,000 years. They have this story, which still persists today, of serpents or dragons. Now they look so their serpents start to become more, I wouldn't say human shaped, but they become more hybrid, and we see this. So the use of the term dragon and serpent and has gone from being a giant snake to it gets deformed into other monstrous beings, maybe a head of a lion or wings of an eagle, and it goes through various shapes. And in China, we see this dragon with a sort of a lion type head. Sometimes it had human faces on it. It has little feet. They're all sort of, it's changed a bit. And the story of this dragon is that, again, it helps people with water. So the story goes that the emperor of China at the time told people that they couldn't have water or blocked it off with dams or something. Yes, this type of dragon. And the people were sad, and so the dragons came along, and basically they gave water to everybody so they could grow their food. The emperor was upset, and he got his special magical friend to trap the dragons under mountains. And those dragons then under the mountains became sources of the 4 main rivers in China. So again, we see a benevolent dragon with water feeding the landscape. Again, coincidence? Who knows?
Real quick. We got a great freaking question.
Okay.
So I was going to type out his name, Matthew here. Matthew, thank you so much for the super chat, being a member. I really appreciate everybody who helps support what we do here. This is a fantastic question. Is this not?
This is a question I get a lot of.
Oh, do you? Okay.
Yes. So,
real quick. If a viewer's listening and they don't see, let me just read it for them. Could ancient cultures have imagined these creatures after finding bones of large animals, dinosaur fossils, for example?
Okay. In the case of dinosaur fossils, it is possible that they may have come across them. I think it is unlikely that it was a significant influence on the dragon myth in early modern human timelines. Certainly in more modern times, certainly Victorian period onwards, absolutely. Because we are doing more excavation, more archaeology, specifically looking for these bones, we can document them and people learn, and we can transfer information across the world. But in terms of sort of early modern human timelines, I think that is unlikely. But certainly it isn't unheard of that in antiquity humans find large bones and think there's something weird going on. I mean, the most popular story is the discovery of pygmy elephant heads in the Greek islands. Now, I don't know if you're familiar with a pygmy elephant head. I
haven't heard about that. Should we look that up?
Look up pygmy elephant head, and then you tell me what pygmy, Pygmy, Pygmy space elephant, head or skull, but skull. Yep.
Okay.
And then I'll let you tell me what mythical being.
Okay, I'm already seeing what. Okay. So let's just show this here. You could see a cyclops, the one eye in the middle. Look, it's got they would imagine,
because that's the nostrils of the elephant. People see that.
Interesting. Here's another kind of example to show you side by side. So this did likely, I mean, in your estimation, the fossil of the elephant head here may have inspired the mythology to some extent, you're suggesting?
To a degree, yeah, in terms of the facial features of a cyclops, maybe.
Okay, you know what I was thinking about? And this is another example of a fossil, real life, inspiring a myth. And I don't know how accurate it is historical timeline-wise. I did a video on Jonah.
Oh, yes.
This is a very important parallel that goes on within Greek myths. So we know about Jason. We know about other characters that play a significant role with saving the woman who's chained to the rock on the very coast on the Mediterranean eastern coast. They found, and according to even church fathers, there's a common source to the story for Jonah, that a Roman emperor of some sort went and gathered the bones of this giant dragon that washed up shore. that supposedly the mythological ancient figure killed in some way, killed it. And the fossil was a well. It was literally well bones on the coast, massive well bones. And we today, of course, if you were looking at, like, let me show you how scary looking well bones. Let me just do well bones. It could be freaky to find this massive fossil on the
well bones.
Yeah, you look at that. That looks like a crazy sea creature, kind of serpentine, kind of. You know what I mean? So
yes, exactly. You wouldn't tell it was a whale. That's for sure.
So the name of the Greek term for the monster is a keto, Keto, I believe it is. And so this massive sea monster that you find in the Argonautic myth, you find it in Jonah, you find it in elsewhere, where the sea creature is fighting against the hero, and the hero ends up defeating the monster. Likely could have been inspired by the fossils of a whale washing upon the shore. I don't know. What are your thoughts?
No. So
okay,
I'd say that actually, because the story is actually far more dominant in Asia.
Okay.
And if you look up Korean petroglyphs, you'll see that in South Korea there's a cliff face with petroglyphs on it, and in it they have paintings of whales with figures in it.
Okay, can we look this up?
So look up petroglyphs, Petroglyphs, and then put Korea and maybe whale as well, and that may give you a search in Google.
This year?
Yeah, so one of there you've got pictures of whales there. So you see pictures of whales with things inside them on the right hand side. That one, yeah, that's a very good one.
Okay.
So there's this rock face with loads of images on, and and we see images of things with inside whales, and there's lots of folklore in Korea that has a very similar story to Jonah.
Interesting. Okay. Well, I figure, I mean, I do know that they did think fossil. There's an ancient church father source that said these fossils that washed up on the shore, these bones, they took them back to back to Rome or whatever. But they had this local legend, I guess you'd say, that spawned from this one big carcass that looks scary.
It's so unusual because it was very rare to have that wash up on shore, so no one would have seen that before. But there's a really good example of when the Vikings first went to Iceland, and Iceland was pretty much unpopulated, and they went there, and the beach was absolutely covered with whale bones and walrus bones, literally just solid white with bones. And that was like a gold mine to them, because they could carve things from bones and make lots of money. And that's why Iceland probably was originally populated. One of the reasons, because it was just a treasure trove of these resources. So yes, but seeing bones separately is a very different surreal image than seeing them all together. You think, oh yeah, these are just lots of bones rather than a big monster. So it all depends on the context and the environment you see them. But yes.
Okay, so just so we're wrapping up this super chat, and I think this is a relevant point to the river point, because what you were doing, and correct me if I'm wrong, is you were portraying that if you look at, and we should pull up an image of Snake River. Where is this at, in China?
The four main rivers. So it'll be the Yangtze. That was an unfair question.
Okay,
I've got any notes on it locally.
Let's see. So here's an image, but it's kind of cartoony. Here's more of an actual map showing these rivers.
Yeah. Yes. Exactly. So you get four dragons, and that's the Four Dragon River. Yeah.
Okay. The Four Dragon River. So ultimately, if you look closely though at rivers, rivers.
It's the Yangtze, the Yellow River, the Pearl River, and the Heilongjiang River. So they call the Heilongjiang means Black Dragon River. So
okay, I just wanted to show like how water will naturally kind of carve out the style of a snake. Mm-hmm. You'll find these all the time in natural river kind of settings, right? I mean, I lived right up there next to the Columbia River in Washington State not too long ago, and it's still curvy, and it's a massive river. I mean, this is not like a normal small little river. This is a massive river, and it's still curvy as you go up up north in Washington. But I just wanted to show that. So back to China, you're suggesting
good. They're nice dragons. Give water to the world. Everything's happy. People love dragons in a way. They're still scary and big and create the world, so you don't want to upset them. But they consider them, the givers of life to the world for many cultures. And so they would have been worshipped. As I say, we see the ritual behavior in China, not in South Africa and Botswana. We see ritual behavior in Australia. So they were worshipped, and they were in effect gods. And the world was different then. We didn't have personified gods. Gods weren't of the shape of humans. They were the spirits. They were the nature. They were the trees and the grass and the wind and the water and everything that moved. There's animism going on. So to them, the dragons were, the givers of life, the gods of the time.
Okay, so, real quick super chat. Victor Engelman says Jesus tamed dragons in multiple apocryphal gospels.
Well, if this conversation lasts long enough, I'm going to tell you a very interesting story about young Jesus.
Yeah, I can't wait. I can't wait. Victor, love you, man. Thank you so much. Yeah. Victor is the Victor who was on the live stream yesterday. So I really appreciate that. And then they asked Benjamin, the European, appreciate your super chat. Any myths about a dragon mother and dragon kings?
Dragon king. Oh, that's that will be more folk tale. So that's more sort of fairy tales. I guess most people would see them as, rather than sort of myth and sacred stories of religion. So I'll be less familiar with those, but I'm almost certain. So this is the thing. If you go to the mythology database or the folklore database and type in dragon kings, it may come up with something. If you're going to do that live, do you want me to log on?
You want to do it later? Because
we can do it later. I can log on and later and do that if people want to see how the database works, because it will give you a geographic dispersal where the story is told. It'll tell you all the countries it's in, the traditions it's in, the references, the books you can find those stories in. It's absolutely
I'm going to add this to the chat then. I'm going to put the link in there.
There's a question we can look at that.
Okay.
So, stories of the dragon. So what happens after that? Well, after that, perhaps the next oldest story of dragons is one you're familiar with, Derek. And it involves Tiamat and Apsu. So Tiamat and Apsu are often considered serpents and dragons. And they are water-based. Now, is that a coincidence? Water seems to be a big theme here. So, and what we see is that these dragons now are used to help create the world. So it isn't that they are giving life to, well, in fact, they are in a way giving life to the world, because the body of Tiamat, head chopped off, sliced in two, and the blood is used to, I think, to help create people. And the body is used to create the firmament and the earth. And that's the story most people are familiar with.
Right.
So we see this dragon there, but there's some great motifs within the Enu Elish that then spread elsewhere. But we see this dragon there, but then everything takes a bit of a nasty turn. And why do you say that? Because Tiamat was actually killed, by a god. Marduk came along and was, had a little bit of fisticuffs with Tiamat, and that story is actually incredibly similar to the story we find in India with Indra, the storm god, and Vitra, who is a serpent. Now, what's going on with these serpents? Why are we now got physical, human-like gods killing serpents? So why are they killing serpents? Well, we see Marduk killing Tiamat to create the world. Whether he actually, that was his plan in the first place, it isn't precisely clear. He was sort of killing Tiamat because he was worried Tiamat was going to kill him, and the gods. Because he was a bit annoyed with life, because there's been a bit of betrayal going on and backstabbing, which, funny enough, then goes on to is the basic creation myth we see all along the North Mediterranean coast and into the Greek creation myth. Herodotus is familiar with telling So all these places have the same creation myth, and it comes from that. But in India, we see Indra, a storm god, suddenly make an appearance and kill Vritra. And he does that because land needs rain. Now, all the previous stories, the dragon's been giving water out all the time, creating life. Everybody loves the dragon. So why have humans suddenly created a storm god to go into the clouds and kill the dragon to make it rain?
Because it was drought, right?
There was drought because why did drought affect people? Because we were farming. So the rise of agricultural farming and the Neolithic farming communities suddenly realized we actually need water at particular times of the year. And the dragon should be giving us the water. And if the dragon isn't giving us the water, then the dragon must be, obviously needs to be beaten up by our storm god, because that's why there's thunder and lightning before it rains, because the storm god has gone into the clouds, waving his big sword and bow and arrow around, and sparks are flying, noises are made, and boom, it rains.
So real quick, just on the map, okay? So let's just hypothetically take the journey that ancient humans are taking. So somewhere in Africa here, likely eastern
Africa,
regions.
They probably got the east, up the Nile's kind of route.
Yeah. So then they come up. Can you see you can see my
I can see the mouse. Yeah.
Yeah. So they travel and then they go over here and boom, they end up on Australia. Of course, over 50,000 years, the land bridge that likely connected them breaks away. Water starts to separate them, and so now you have people who are obviously First Nation Australians, if we can call them that.
That's what I call them. Yes.
Yeah, the same way we would do for the Americas. And so some didn't stay in Australia, but actually journeyed up into Asia and various regions there. You end up getting these rivers that were life givers. And their relationship to water is significant. I imagine it's the same thing probably in Australia as well. But for sure, we know in Asia that the rivers are connected to the mythologies and they're life givers. Go ahead 10, 15,000 years from then, we were kind of nomadic, right? We were able to pick up our tent and go wherever the water was. We would find it. If the river
find a cave, we didn't have portable caves back then. Right. I get what you mean. Yes.
So if the river shifted course, let's just say, and went somewhere else, we just follow the river. We don't have to put our roots in and get stuck. Exactly. And so people from Asia start to move westward, and start to, grow crops, agriculture. I'm almost thinking.
You jump in the gut. Yeah, the farming came a bit later. Yes, so it was about 10,000 BC, so 12,000 years ago we start farming. So we are gathering grasses and animals, but about 10,000 BC, 12,000 years ago, we actually start manipulating the grasses and the animals so they actually are better suited to us. Better suited to the climate. So that's when farming actually happens.
Yes. Okay, I'm thinking up here in this Georgia /
So that's the next stage of the story.
Okay, I don't want to butcher it then. Okay,
but you got farming going on the east side of the Mediterranean. That's where it starts in Anatolia. Yeah, just there where your mouse is. And we get these stories of the dragon has to be fought. So in effect, because it isn't raining, and people wondered why there's these storms before it did rain, they create a god that sort of matches the environment. And that is a reason for it raining. And that god that is created is a storm god. Now, you may also hear at this point that some people think Yahweh used to be a storm god. And some may even say Yahweh used to be a dragon. And if you think about these stories, that's very possible. That there may be older tales that suggest this, that there are gods around that maybe were beneficial and then change as human society changes and farms. And then, the good dragon becomes bad, and you create a god that actually reflects what the storm is doing. So there were storm gods before we were farming, but they just represented the noise of storms rather than actually there's something physical going on. There was just some angry, raging spirits. So that goes on. So we have this I'll say, bad dragon that's holding water. So the good dragon has turned to a bad dragon. So what happens now? What happens now is that we find that farming develops and goes into Anatolia, and some of those farmers go north over the Caucasus Mountains, actually round via Georgia. There's sort of not an easy way to go there, but you can go there. And they end up in the Pontic-Caspian steppe, along with cultures that have come from the Volga, which is north of the Caspian Sea on your right, and from the Dnipro, which is north of the Black Sea on your left. That area is sort of a steppe land, so it's very plain land, and that isn't necessarily so ideal for agriculture, but it is really good for cattle. So rather than agricultural farming, we see pastoral farming raised there. Okay, and these people from the Dnipro and the Caspian Sea and the Volga, they have their own stories. So some are what we call Western hunter-gatherers, some are Caucasus hunter-gatherers, and when there's been some influence, say, from the agricultural farmers, and they understand now how to breed cows because they got that knowledge from the Near East, and they start breeding cows and become pastoral farmers. Now, cows are really interesting. As you know, you have your own very old cow.
Let me go grab it. Grab it, man. I love that thing. Hold on 1 second.
Yeah, we are talking about a figurine here. We're not being personal to anyone. So, yes, the pastoral farming community worships cows. And they worship cows and the bovine because cows are perfect. And Derek has a perfect cow there. Look at that.
Listen, this is a gift. This was a gift. I want to do this real quick. Bear with me. I'm sorry I'm putting the focus on, but like people need to see how cool this dragon is. This is this is anywhere what? Sorry, my audio is bad. Like 2000, roughly
thousands of years old. Yes,
thousands of years old. This is a bull. Oh, Let me move my head here. Maybe I need to have it focused. Maybe it helps it.
Yeah, there you go. Perfect.
So there's the bull. It was a gift given to me by Jon in person, and impressive, bro. Impressive. So, and where was this from?
Northwest India. So what you'd consider the Vedic culture, the Rig Veda.
Okay. Huh. That's awesome, man.
Okay. So why is the cow so important? And what has this got to do with dragons? Well, the cow was important because every part of its body was useful. It was, the hide is clothes, you could eat the flesh, bones are tools, urine, disinfectant, manure is fertilizer, the sinew is string, and you could even drink the milk it made for its babies. I mean, everything about the cow was useful, and so it's considered sacred by these people. And that meant that if anybody who wasn't part of their society had a cow, they must have stolen it because this society thought that their god only made cows for them.
Oh gosh. So hold on, just so I and we got a super chat we got to get to, but I want to just make this, correct me in my sketch of what you just described. We're leaving Asia. We've moved more westward. We're way back, we found a way to manipulate grasses and in a sense, agriculture in some way, and the roots start to stick. The rivers that were once places we just followed, now that we're more situated and we're roots in the ground, now we're doing farming and stuff like that. It caused us to, in a sense, wait for the blessing of rain or water from the dragon to bring it to us. We used to follow it. So likely we didn't recognize over the generations how this plays out. But that dragon that was once benevolent and good that gave us rain, when you end up in a drought situation and you're getting no rain, became a naughty dragon, a bad dragon. So now the bad dragon becomes the evil dragon who should have blessed us, but clearly isn't trying to give us any rain in some settings.
Exactly.
We moved north, or many people are probably likely moving up north. I'm sure there's all sorts. It's got to be a very nuanced situation. I'm sure it's like some break off, some stay.
There's lots of research about it at the moment. Yeah.
Right. And so you're saying now they're coming up here and cattle become like they're self-sustaining. Everything about them is sacred. Every piece of meat for protein, every piece of fur for skin, for tent, for you can wear it, you can drink from it, you can eat from it. It even produces horns. You can use the bone. Everything about the cow is holy, and this is where the word "holy cow" comes from.
Possibly not, but yeah, I made a video actually called that because yes.
Okay, and so I'm sure there's going to be something where you start to connect some dots for us here in a moment.
I'm just setting up there's loads of dots to connect. There's, I mean, we can go offshoot from off piece for a moment where you saw the pictures of the rivers, with the curly words, and where you go to the Near East and people have settled farming, so they're now stuck by a river. What you find is those rivers that curl, they break, and over time the river changes direction. And that change of direction floods the settlements that are built on those curly bits of land because the river now moves. And that's probably a significant influence to many of the flood myths we start seeing from the Near East.
That's worth getting
as a side piece. And we can talk flood myths in another podcast if you want, because I can tell you that they are far, far older than most people ever realise. Tens of thousands of years old.
I'd love to show an example of that visually for someone. Like, I wish we had but I know exactly what you're talking about. You have these curves, and if you're going to put your settlement somewhere, I mean, it would think common sense. They're not going to know that in 10 years from now, a random anomaly of a extreme storm is going to come through, but they're going to set up camp inside of one of those curves, which is right in the danger spot of an actual flood.
I think it's secure, but it isn't. Yeah. And that's not uncommon, and that happened a lot down the Euphrates and Tigris rivers. And so you will see some grifters, I won't say who, talking about lost cities that have been flooded under 30 meters of flood, and they were ancient civilizations for thousands of years before. But no, they were just cities built on a river, and they're subject to this purpose. And because there's so much mud being taken, that's why they were so covered so quickly, and it looks like they were buried thousands of years before they were. So there's a
okay. Real quick,
as a side project, right?
Real quick, Esmil in the house. Thank you, Esmil. Love you. Any traces of prehistoric stories of multiple dragons interacting like Rainbow and Milky Way, or River Valley Canyon serpent dragons, or with sun and moon?
That is a big question. Now, Sean should know how to use the folklore database. Rather than ask me these awkward questions live. Any prehistoric stories, of multiple dragons interacting, not like the Milky Way. I mean, we have multiple dragons in the Chinese story, but normally the dragons tend to be individual. I would say in many of these stories, there is one bad dragon and one good dragon. So I don't think multiple dragons are really the thing. And there's a reason possibly for that, which I may get to soon, because the dragons sort of change a bit. So, and so do the cows, which we can also talk about in a minute. So, Sean, not that I'm aware of, apart from the Chinese story, which had those multiple dragons. I'm not aware of multiple dragons. Well, that's an interesting question. I don't think people really gave the dragons much of or certainly there were no stories that persisted that showed the life of a dragon, because that wasn't the importance of a dragon. The dragon was important about shaping or influencing a significant part of society. So that's how I would interpret that or suggest that it happened. So
thank you. Yeah,
thanks, Sean.
Thank you so much.
Now, we have this sacred cow, this holy cow. And as I say, the society around it, which we shall call for now the Proto-Indo-Europeans. But the Proto-Indo-Europeans mean they spoke a language from the Indo-European family before that language had properly developed. It's a hypothetical language, meaning that we don't actually have real examples of it, but for all sense of probability is the most likely reason the existence of that language is why we have Indo-European languages around Europe and Asia. I have to put that in as a caveat. Otherwise, there'll be somebody trying to debunk that with various things. So anyway, so these Proto-Indo-Europeans, we call them. So we have the Near Eastern and Anatolian Neolithic farmers who were agricultural farmers, Proto-Indo-Europeans, pastoral farmers. They thought anyone in this group, and the most well-known of that group was the Yamnaya from about 5,500 years ago. They thought if anybody had a cow, they must have stolen it because their god only gives them the cows. Okay. And how did they steal it? Who could be able to steal a cow? A human couldn't steal a cow because they're so big. What is big and could steal a cow that is bad?
It's the damn dragon.
It's the damn dragon. And so their dragon myth changes such that the dragons steal the cattle, and they have a story called the cattle raiding myth. And that is that a hero gives tribute and sacrifice to a storm god. The storm god gives them power, although in earlier stories the storm god actually does the work. And then they go off to a place far away outside the realms of the real world, and find a dragon, normally maybe in some mountains, defeat the dragon and bring the cattle back. And that is a story that became quite popular. And we see it, say, in the Rig Veda, we see it in Greek stories, we even see it in the Bible, in David and the Philistines. I believe there's a story of cattle raiding. And we even see it down in Africa. So we see this story. Now, because it is quite dominant in Proto-Indo-European speaking descendant cultures, we normally believe it started there. But there is a possibility it possibly could have even started in the Near East. Because agriculture was so strong there, it sort of was removed from the playbook of folklore there and just persisted in places where agriculture was less dominant. But the general feeling is that the cattle raiding myth was there. Now, and the cattle raiding myth changes, and probably the most interesting version of the cattle raiding myth, which doesn't look like a cattle raiding myth, is the one we find in Scandinavia in the Old Norse the Vikings told. And
so real quick, I want to get that. Okay. I want to hear this. Everybody remind me. Hit me in the head, somebody, if I forget this. But I need you to just tell us what the cattle raiding myth generically sounds like. How did that story go? All right, so there was once upon a time a dragon, and it went and it flew into this place, and it took. I mean, what is the story?
Once upon a time, the local farmer, let's call him Bernard.
Okay.
He went to the field, and his cattle had gone, and he was like, "Who took my cattle?" So he went to the greatest warrior in the village. And the greatest warrior in the village was called Trito. And he's called Trito because that is etymologically linked to the number 3. And that's important because people named 1 and 2 were the names of the gods of the Proto-Indo-Europeans, Manu and Ymir. Manu meaning man, the first person, and Ymir often meaning twin or similar to that. But we haven't brought those into this story yet. But maybe,
okay.
Maybe.
So am I messing you up already? Because
no. This is all. I mean, I go all over the place anyway. The fact you're just making me go all over the place in different places is fine. It's, so Bernard goes, "Oh, my cattle are missing." Goes to Trito. Trito, can you help me? Trito thinks, "Yes, I can help you, but this is a big battle if I'm going to fight a dragon, because a dragon's the only thing that could have stolen these cattle." So he makes a sacrifice to the storm god. Now, the storm god can sometimes have a name that is similar to Trito, but sometimes has a name like Thunder or similar. We see that. And what he does, there's different ways of doing it, but what we see, certainly in the Rig Veda, where this happens, is that the person takes a drink of something and it makes him sick. And then he has to then drink again what has come out to give him super strength. And that's the strength the thunder god has given him. And that makes him strong enough to get on a horse and ride off to the sunset and get the dragon and kill, or not necessarily kill the dragon, because if you kill the dragon, you can't have any more dragon slaying stories because you've killed the dragon. So he just defeats it. And there's a slight hiccup in these stories. Anyway, he comes back with cattle, hopefully. And if he comes back with cattle, he has succeeded. And then what happens is that the best bovine is then sacrificed to the gods to say, thank you for giving me power. Here's the cattle. Yep. Killed cattle. And one of them sacrificed, smoke goes in the air because there's a big fire, usually a big fire that sends the smoke up. And with that would hopefully encourage the gods to let all the other cattle breed and they have more cattle. And Bernard go back to his field in a few months and he's happy because he's got lots of cattle. And that is the more contemporary version of the cattle raiding myth.
So before we get to the super chat, you were going to tell us about an alternative version that found its way. Right? Yes.
Into Scandinavia and the Vikings, because I know you like a bit of Vikings.
Oh, yeah.
I think this may be a story I told you before, but I'll tell it again for those people here. So in Scandinavia, there is a story about Thor. Thor is like a thunder god. He's got all the attributes of a thunder god, a bit like Heracles in the Greek, but he isn't quite a thunder god. He's perhaps more of a sky god in where we see him in roles. And there's a story about him going fishing for the Mythgard serpent. And now the Mythgard serpent is the serpent that is wrapped around the world, and its mouth bites its tail. And where is it located? It's located in the sea, in the water. Do you know any of the dragons and serpents that are located in the sea and water that are bad?
Yeah.
Is that coincidence that Tiamat has a similar thing? So
very doubtful.
So we have this serpent biting its tail, holding the sea back. And the story goes that if the serpent ever lets go of its tail, the Jörmungandr, if it ever lets go of its tail, the seas will come in and the Ragnarok, which is the eschatological motif or myths of the Vikings, will start and the world will end. So probably not a good idea to make it let go of its tail, but myths are there to be contradicted. So Thor goes off and the story goes he dresses up in disguise and turns up to the house of Ymir. Now Ymir is the grandfather of another god, Tyr, and he has a special cauldron that the gods need to make some special wine to have a party. And Thor wants this cauldron. But Ymir, being a frost giant, we call them, like a Jotun, would kill Thor because he hates Thor, and Thor hates Ymir. So Thor is in disguise, goes to Ymir's house. It's actually brilliant, these stories. And he has to bite his tongue so he doesn't kill Ymir, and Ymir doesn't recognize his Thor. And he stays there and they have supper, but Thor, being Thor, eats a lot, and he eats Ymir out of literally house and home. And Ymir goes, I'm going to have to go fishing and get some more food tomorrow. And Thor thinks, you're going fishing? I know, I could probably catch the Mythgard, the serpent, never go fishing with you. And he goes, can I go fishing with you? And he goes, whatever you want to do, I don't care. Because by then Ymir's getting really annoyed with this pesky guest he doesn't recognise. And so they go out and Thor goes, I need some bait. And Ymir goes, well, I've got a field down there. You go to the field and get some bait and meet me on the boat. So Thor goes to the field, and in the field are Ymir's cattle. And what Thor does is he looks at the cattle and he chooses the best bull in the field and kills it and chops off its head. So in effect, it's reflexing the cattle raiding myth, being Thor as well, because he's quite comedic, you could argue. So he's now killed the best cow rather than saved it, and uses the head to then go on the boat and catch the Mythgard serpent, which as he catches it, so it must have let go of its tail when the Ragnarok is starting, but we'll ignore that for the moment because myths are there to be contradicted. Ymir goes, oh my God, you just caught the Midgard serpent, cut the rope, stamped on its head, and Thor loses the Midgard serpent, and they go home without it. And then everybody realizes who everyone is, and everybody tries to kill each other, and Thor escapes. But that is a cattle raiding myth reflexed.
Yeah.
Very interesting. So basically, Thor kills a cattle rather than rescue it to get the dragon, rather than kill the dragon to get the cattle.
I love that. That story is hilarious. I mean, it's got the kind of hiding your identity motif that you find in all these ancient hospitality myths as well. Like they got to show hospitality, but this stranger doesn't have the best of intentions. So it's actually a funny story. Real quick, we got a super chat from Nicole So Rich. Thank you so much for the super chat. Was there any other myths that Enoch was taken from, meaning the Watchers, fallen angels, etc.? I'm not sure the dating of when Enoch was written. I would personally encourage people to check out Seth L. Sanders' book. Let me pull this up. It's called Adapa to Enoch. Adapa to Enoch. Okay. This is a very scholarly book that you can get on Amazon. Obviously, it's super pricey. There might be other ways to get it somehow, more CBAC. But he offers a history of first millennium scribes through their heavenly journeys and heroes, treating the visions of ancient Mesopotamian and Judean literature as pragmatic things made by people. He presents each scribal culture as an individual institution via detailed evidence for how visionary figures were used over time. The author also provides the first comprehensive survey of direct evidence for contact between Babylonian, Hebrew, and Aramaic scribal cultures, and when and how they came to share their key features rather than irrecoverable religious experience. He shows how ideal scribal selves. Anyway, it goes in, that's a technical description. But in the book, he covers how the ancient Adapa story. So for those who don't know about Adapa, the most famous telling of Adapa that we have in the ancient world is Adapa breaking the south wind's wing, or the Adapa and the south wind, or something like that it's called. And he's fishing for his god. He's fishing for fish for his god Enki or Ea, depending on what language. The story is in both Babylonian and, of course, in I believe this goes all the way back into Sumerian. But Adapa was a sage who had powers, and he breaks the south wind's wing, and because it blew and tipped over his boat, so he got pissed at it. He broke it. Anu, the high god in heaven, says, "Whoever stopped the wind, summon them, bring them up here. I've got some words with them. What the hell?" So before he goes, Ea says, "Listen, when you get up there, he's going to offer you food and drink of immortality." Or not immortality. He doesn't tell him it's immortality. He says it's food or drink of death. If you eat or drink, you're dead. Don't eat it. But if he says he'll anoint you with oil, let him do it. So he goes through Nengesh Zeta, I believe it is, at the gates, gets into Anu's house, and then he offers him food of immortality, Anu says. And he's like, "Nice try, buddy. I'm not eating any of your food or drinking any of your drink." Anu goes, "Oh my gosh, what has Ea done?" He knows that it's Ea in the story. He goes, "How the hell did Ea do this to humanity?" So now death and all these sufferings and problems, kind of like Pandora's box, expresses, are now going to be troubling humans. But Ea didn't want him to become an immortal, because if he would have ate or drank the immortality, he would not have been able to return to Earth. He'd have had to stay separated from mankind, but he wanted him to come back. And of course, the god Anu has this chat with him, and the story goes that he ascended. He was taken by Anu from Earth up to heaven to talk with him about what he just did. And of course, the story brings in other aspects we find in like the Adam and Eve story and things like that. Well, he points out that Enoch, which you also get in the Genesis genealogy, is taken from Earth. And then they take this little story in Genesis and seem to elaborate on it and expand it into what we call one Enoch, which was likely written, because you asked when it was written, likely written probably nowhere earlier than the Hellenistic period. You could maybe go back to the Persian period if you really wanted to, because scribal tradition, according to Seth L. Sanders, they started learning these Babylonian stories, in his view, by the period of the Persian period, as scribes actively working with ancient sources. They literally took over the schools. And this gets into another history lesson, but I'll just give you a real quick one. The Jews that were in Persia, according to Seth L. Sanders, there was a school of scribes that were Persian. They revolted against one of the known kings. Because they wanted to protest against one of the known kings, that king kicked their ass and kicked them out of the school. So the scribes that were in training and head over the schools were no longer Persians, but they were actually people from Yahud, people from the territory we would call Jerusalem and other places that were actually filling in those gaps and now learning these traditions, and the scribal tradition continues. The other thing is ancient Mesopotamian scribes would also identify as Adapa. So this is way more complex than I could even elaborate here in this super chat, but I would just say, look to that. I would also say, look to the Greeks for fallen angel stuff potentially here, because you do have this Titanomachy where the Titans are now entrapped inside the earth in a rocky underground cavern. And Enoch talks about an underground cavern with the fallen ones that fell, Azazel and various angel names and stuff, get trapped in the underground world. And I think you have a mixture of Greek mythology, you have ancient Mesopotamian stuff coming in, you have Zoroastrian material, like there's all sorts of cool stuff. And I would recommend maybe start with Seth L. Sanders if you can afford that book. I really wish there was a popular level one. I'm going to have to write a book, John. I'm going to have to write a book. So I think I spent enough time on that. I apologize for spending that amount of time, but this is an area that I have explored a lot and I really dive deep into, and there's much more than I can even begin to tell you, but it goes further back than Adapa to Atana, which is one of the first kings ever listed in ancient Mesopotamian kings list. And Atana was taken to heaven on an eagle. So he flies to heaven on an eagle because he needs protege. He can't have kids. And the serpent and the eagle are fighting. He sides with the eagle. The eagle takes him to heaven. He asks the gods, hey, I need kids. I need offspring for my line to continue. And the gods bless him with offspring. So it's a fun story. Anyway. Couple more here. Solera Knight. Thank you so much, Solera. Are Nahash gray aliens or intelligent reptilians?
Is that to me?
That's to you. You're listen, all of the alien fans are going to come after you, bro. I'm tired of them coming after me.
On this podcast, I am the Nashash great alien expert. So obviously, I would say neither. Oh, Nash. Well, yeah, no, I don't think they are either intelligent reptilians or grey aliens. But the colour of the alien is subjective, I think, depending on the light source. So they may be aliens, but a different shade of colour. But that's no idea what.
No idea.
Question is.
Yeah, I get a lot of the people who are online that obviously are fans of the whole aliens thing, which I'm still skeptical of. I don't care what government supposed released, like I'm still holding my horses here. I'm going, hold on.
There's no way aliens would have found us. No way. The chances of another civilization to do that in the Milky Way is so slim. And for them to then find us is so slim as to be next to impossible in the timeline of the Milky Way. I mean, the Milky Way's been here 4 billion years. What is the chance of a civilization appearing at the same time as us, finding us, creating the technology to travel all the way over us, just say hello and do all these weird shizzle things and fly home? It just doesn't make sense at all.
Yeah.
So no.
I'm skeptical, obviously. Victor Engelman, since when the Arabian coast is named Tiamat? Victor, you're not a philologist, obviously. And we had a show yesterday where we were looking at the coast, the Arabian coastline, literally names. And this is an important point. So we aren't going to be able to answer. Like, I don't think John will know the answer to this question, but he'll still find it fascinating. I think, at least if you're tracking with me on this, let me pull up the map real quick. Let me pull up the map. I like pulling out the map, man. It gives you a little more.
We're very interactive on these now.
Yeah, it's more fun. So along the coast here, inside where you have the Sinai Peninsula, where you end up getting like the two little breakoffs here to the Aqaba and toward Egypt. On the coast, the name Tiamat is literally used for the coastline, and this is obviously in Arabic, so it's going to be hard for me to really, identify these parts. But I would like to pull up the map. Let's see. Arabia coast.
It makes sense that it's the part of the Persian Gulf that flows out of the Euphrates and Tigris, because the Tiamat's children are named after the delta from the Tigris and Euphrates.
So that's what Victor was trying to hint at. So this green area right here, Tiamat. Well, isn't it? I think it's odd, right? Because Tiamat ends up being split. Well, the Exodus story with the Red Sea is supposedly happening somewhere up here, right? This coast that I just pointed you to is identified as Tiamat.
But it isn't the Red Sea. That's a mistranslation, isn't it? I thought it was the Reed Sea.
It depends on the scholar you read. There are different scholars who say Red Sea, Reed Sea. Some of even say Suf Sea, which means the farthest sea. But anyway, there's all sorts of stuff. I guess like it's ironic that this territory, somewhere in this region, it is supposed that they have an exodus and the water is split. It's the same splitting of waters kind of chaos comp, but it's demythologized into the Exodus story. Because in Genesis, you also have a demythologized creation myth that's like not naming Tiamat, but it uses a cognate of Tihom, which is related to Tiamat. But when you go read in later, like, I mean, older really prophets, you have him like fighting Leviathan, you have him with Yam, splitting Yam, all of these kinds of things. So is this geography with Tihama, here on the Arabian coast, and the splitting of the water that is supposedly exiting Egypt to get into Sinai and to get to the promised land related to this whole motif? That's kind of where I'm going at with this. I don't know, but it could just be that the name for sea is related to the term Tiamat.
Well, Tiamat is deep, isn't it, rather than sea or salt? Isn't it salt water? I don't know if it's salt water or deep water. Isn't it? It's one of the two.
Yeah.
Yes. But certainly, it was the story is relating to the landscape, absolutely, because the landscape was built by Tiamat being cut in two. So
and you're saying that the children of Tiamat, Euphrates, and
they're named after the parts of the delta coming out of the Euphrates and Tigris rivers. So if you look at when Tiamat has children, they're called Lamu and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
I think they mean river delta or something, or mud flats. I think those names means. I mean, this is not my specialist subject by a long shot, but
of course,
in the back of my head, I remember reading something about that.
Okay, Victor. The fun observation, man. I really want to explore this further and get some scholars who might have awareness of this exact thing and get their answer. And then Michelle Marie, thank you. Appreciate you. Thank you for the super chat. Love the support. And now we got one more here. What is the conscious Solera Knight? Thank you for the super chat. What is the conscious altering forbidden fruit?
The conscious forbidden fruit. I don't know necessarily there's a forbidden fruit. There is a common motif amongst myths and legends across Europe and into Asia of a drinking a substance that can affect you. There are many ideas what that could be. Some think it's beer. Some think it's a caffeine drink. Some thinks it may be mushroom related. I think it really depends on the culture and the time, and the location you're at on what it was. There's no one answer. But certainly for the Rig Veda, I think the consensus is it's probably more of a caffeine-related drink, and people were just having OD caffeine attacks like when they're drinking, which is why they're shaking and things. It's like Starbucks before they charged, sort of thing.
Oh my gosh. Solera, appreciate the super chat. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. So I threw you off track there with a couple super dupers we had to do, but we had fun in the Viking cattle raiding myth. Yeah.
Where are we now? And let me tell you, because our story of dragons has not finished, because the dragon was good with water. The dragon was bad with water. The dragon was bad with cows. But what happened? What happened was we invented writing, and that caused all sorts of problems. And what do I mean by that? So what I specialize in, for people who don't know who I am, I specialize in comparative mythology, computational comparative mythology, and I focus primarily on Indo-European myths. But the thing that I do is try to construct or reconstruct and find origins of our oldest stories. And these are stories that were told in the oral tradition, i.e. before they were written down. And most people say, well, how can you find a story that wasn't written down? Yeah, that's like, can't do that. Well, you can, because we can collect data from all the stories told by all the cultures around the world and look at them. And we have other data such as linguistic evolution, archaeological information, understanding human migration, DNA. We can make a probabilistic guess of how old these stories are and where they've come from. And using all that data, because there is so much of it, we can make a probabilistic assessment that these stories were being told, perhaps far earlier than they were written down. And we got lots of evidence of that. And that is what the folklore database does, which does have, by the way, 69 stories on Dragon Kings. I've checked.
Dang.
I can quickly share that because now we're going off topic. I can.
Yeah, you want to share your screen?
I can share the screen. Let me just whack that up. Let me do that. Let me stop screen. Let me present. Share screen. I might as well share the entire screen so you can actually see the mythology database. Yeah. So I should be able to make that bigger, I think. Is it Control Plus? So there, in the mythology database, I typed in Dragon King at the top. Yeah, this is free to use. Gives you a map. This is where all the stories of Dragon Kings are told in the world.
Wow.
That we have, or most of them. So predominantly Southeast Asia, but there are some in Europe. And the tool will also tell you narratives that are similar to it somewhere. But basically, it gives you a list of all the narratives where they're told, and you can read them if you want. So let's say 11 Burnt Skin is told in Korea. If you read the English version of the story, it tells you what it is there. It can tell you sort of aspects of the story as well. So that is in a nutshell, the folklore database. It does a lot more than that, but that's if you want to use it to find a story. If you're an author, especially, you want some ideas. Really good for that. So that's an aside. But let's get back to dragons. As I say, they've been bad, good cows. People getting OD'd on caffeine. Chopping heads off. All gone crazy. But we invent writing. And why is that simple? That's where I was. Why is that important? Because before writing, how did we remember stories? And we remembered stories because they were nearly always told as poetry or song, because it's much easier to remember poetry and song. You have a pattern, a meter that sort of almost forces what you want to say, like, I was high in the sky, and if I fall, I may die, sort of thing. That all rhymes. The cats are on the mat kind of thing. So poetry works, and everything was poetry, and it was fine. But then when people started to transcribe that, write it down, they'd hear these words, but they wouldn't necessarily get them sort of right, I guess you'd call it. There is mistranslations going on and errors going on. So what we find is that there was the original sort of dragon cattle raiding myth told in the Avestan literature, so Persia and Iran, part of Zoroastrianism in effect, called the cow that was taken Vanta. And Vanta is a female who is desired. Okay, and then what we find is the story travels from Persia down into India, because that is the migration route. And as it goes into sort of an Indo-Iranian language, Vanta is changed to Danu, which means she who lactates and gives milk. So the reason they're using these words is because they may want to say, the hero rescued the cow, but the hero rescued the cow isn't very poetic. So they rather say maybe the hero called Bilk rescued she who lactates and gives milk. That may be the poem. It probably wasn't, but just giving you an idea that they have poetry and they had to use metaphors to make it all rhyme and fit the meter. So rather than saying let's rescue some cows, they use these metaphors. And so Danu was she who lactates milk. However, by the time we get to the Rig Veda and Northwest India and the Vedic culture, Danu becomes Dena. They mistranslate it. And Dena is sometimes translated as meaning cows, but in the translation they wrote down, they put it in a context as two women captured by enemies rather than cows captured by enemies. And so in India, we see this story of two women captured by enemies. Now, who did lots of trade with India? The Near East and Greece. And they started telling dragon stories of how these dragons didn't capture cows, but they captured two royal queens, and they took them away. And the queens then get changed into princesses. And before you know it, in the Middle Ages, heroes are rescuing princesses from dragons rather than cows, which sounds far more noble to me, and it should have been done in the first place. But it took us a few thousand years to get there. So that is why knights rescue princesses from towers, from the dragon, because of a mistranslation of the Indian tale of killing dragons to rescue cattle.
Oh my gosh. So that's going to spawn more conversation about stories that come after. Once there's a mistranslation, you start getting like some of the famous dragon slayer stories that end up in the medieval period and others as well. Real quick, someone asked, and I think it's an interesting question: dragons are comets? Solera Knight, thank you for the super chat.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. So different cultures look at different symbols in the landscape. And by the landscape, I'm talking about everything around them in different ways. And without doubt, I'm sure there would have been some cultures that saw things in the sky, such as comets, and may have thought, oh, that's a dragon flying or causing problems. I have no doubt there would be some cultures that would think that, but that wasn't a common thought. That wasn't consistent across the world. So yes, some people may have thought that, but that wasn't a sort of ubiquitous view when writing stories.
Thank you, Solera. I do just so our viewers understand, we went from the oldest known snake depiction, big, not just a normal, but a giant snake in Australia that we have rock solid evidence of. Yeah.
South Africa.
Oh, sorry. I keep getting Australia mixed up with
South Africa. That will upset a few people. But that
and this is an angle right here. Oh, wrong one. Let me go here. This is the side, and the front is down here where you can see my right down here where you see my little thing. So this massive snake, 70,000 years ago, approximately, give or take, guess. You have the snake. Eventually, the snake travels with humans who travel to Australia, to East Asia, where rivers are obviously identified with the snake. They might have been already identified in some way, shape, or form in Africa, I imagine, right? With water somehow?
Yes, almost certainly. We lack evidence or probabilistic evidence to show details of that.
Got it. And so eventually the snake is the origin of the dragon. It is a serpent, a snake. So for anyone who's wondering about dragons, the imagination from the snake jumps to massive snake, which is simply a dragon. Now, you moved from that to cattle, and we moved from cattle to mistranslating to be queens, and all sorts of stuff's going on here. Take us from here on stories that go from that mistranslation, but then also, what about snakes with wings and stuff like dragons? Is that a modern thing, or
lots of modern things? So from this point on, anything goes, because things are written and it is the world. But you have to blame much on the Victorian period and their sort of understanding of antiquities, or which is their word for finding things that were old in a non-academic way. They went out and discovering all sorts of things, and they made up many stories, and they found big dinosaur bones and misrepresented them and misshaped them and the like. And what you'll find, if you ever look at artwork of dragons throughout human history, or certainly the last, let's say, 600 years, where we have sort of oil paintings and the like, you will see dragons change from being dog or pig-sized toad-like creatures, eventually getting bigger and longer necks and eventually wings. So a couple of hundred years ago, they started getting wings, breathing fire, because they used to have poison bites which could burn, or that was a story, but that eventually changed into flames because it looks better. Something as simple as that probably was going on to the big dragons we see today because of our views on dinosaurs and the like. So the views we think of dragons now, when you play games like a World of Warcraft, watch Game of Thrones, they are really modern views of the dragons by creators trying to create the most impressively wonderful thing and really losing the idea of how sacred and, in effect, primal dragons really are.
And again, their depiction of them as flying and fire breathing is just a leap from the fire breathing part. Seems like you said the poison from venomous serpents. Either they knew the bite was poisonous and they knew what it did to humans and they thought it kills you.
Like a snake bite, it's a burn.
It's a burn. Or they spit venom too. Some spit venom. So that's easy to see why they might jump to.
So, this all brings us nicely back to the cow, because we like cows here. And
I do.
Let me tell, if you all like to carry on, we can have a little journey on cows now, because cows are very important.
Please.
So, let's say we go back to the Old Norse and the Vikings, which you like. And the Viking have this, as I say, this Thor fishing for the Midgard serpent cattle raiding myth that has been reflexed, where we see the cow. But there is another story where a cow appears, and that is in their creation myth.
Mm.
Now, in their creation myth, they have a beginning of the universe, or the cosmos, is probably better to call it in these stories. They have a giant, big giant, and the giant has with him a cow at the start of cosmos, which to most people is a bit unusual. What is a cow doing there? Oh, the cow licks some ice to create another god, and eventually through weird behavior, the giant Ymir splits up and creates other creatures, and everybody interacts with each other and more creatures appear. But eventually Odin comes along, who is considered the chief god of the Old Norse myth and the pantheon, and he, with his friends or brothers, depending on the version of the story, kill Ymir, this initial primordial giant, and his blood floods the world and everybody dies, apart from a couple of people. Sounds familiar if you read the Bible. And then with the body, they create the world, which it sounds very familiar to the Ymir Elish.
Right.
Now, and what's quite interesting, someone mentioned Enoch earlier, is that the story of the creating the world basically creates these homologies, we would call them, where the hair is grass and the blood is the water, the bones are rocks and the flesh is soil. So there's sort of analogues between the human body and the earth and how it's linked. And in Enoch too, we actually see Jesus created in a very similar way, which is very odd. Why is that? Does that mean the Indo-Europeans have influenced Enoch? We'll come to that. So, because this may upset lots of people, it certainly upset me when I found out what's going on here, because it turned all my thinking on its head. So why is this cow here, and why is that so important in this Old Norse myth? Well, Old Norse is considered an Indo-European culture. They speak an Indo-European language, which we can take back to the Pontic-Caspian steppe between the Caspian Sea and the Black Sea. And basically, if we look at all the Indo-European languages and all the different cultures, we see there is the Purusha hymn of the Rig Veda, and that talks about Purusha being split up to create the world, but it doesn't have a sort of cow in it. But the Rig Veda does have a Manu in it as well. But Purusha is sort of linked with that in a way. We see in Tacitus's Germania, so he's a Roman historian in Germany around maybe the 1st century CE. He notes what the Germanic people are doing, and he notes they have a sort of gods called Manu or Manus and Twisto, cognate with Manu and Yemo, which is interesting. If you look at the Zoroastrian, we see similar things. We see Geomat, which is cognate with Yemo through a very complex way, but Geo is like Yemo, and so we know that there's proof there. It's a long story I won't mention here because it's quite boring, but We know that. So we see all these links of Indo-European people having this body split up. But what we also see is the cow is sacred. The cow is sacred in India, where you get when the Hindu religion then pops out of the Indo-Europeans. And in what's interesting is in Rome, we see Romulus and Remus, sort of two twins of creation rather than Manu and Ymir, and they are suckled by a wolf rather than a cow. So in the Old Norse, the god suckles on the cows, but in Rome, they suckle on the wolf. So there is this quadruped mammal, these two people at the beginning, they're twins. One is representative of a priest and one is representative of a king, really. If you read these stories, that's what's going on. And basically the priest kills the king and splits up the king's body and creates the world. And yeah, there's this cow lurking around. And you think, well, that's interesting, John, perhaps. Well, what was thought is that actually this is an Indo-European creation myth. And I thought this as well. I thought, yeah, that makes sense. But then I discovered some work by Landsberger and Wilson. And they found a tablet of the Enuma Elish, the fifth tablet of the Enuma Elish. And in the fifth tablet of the Enuma Elish, Marduk, the god, defeats Tiamat and creates the earth from her, as we all know. But it describes Tiamat as a cow.
Is this a specific version of the story of the Enuma Elish?
It's a specific fifth tablet they found where it goes into more detail on what Tiamat looks like, and Tiamat has udders. So why is Tiamat a cow? That's sort of interesting. So a scholar, and I saw this, and there's another scholar who I absolutely respect his work, Bruce Lincoln, and he saw this as well. Hopefully, he may have even seen my work, I don't know, but perhaps he did it independently. And he found some other examples. And it turns out there are a number of stories where the myth has this sort of human-animal pairing, as well as king-priest pairing. There is a sort of sacrifice or death, and then one thing goes into many. So, body split to create the world, and a new era begins, like a new world is created. And that's quite interesting. And what he's found is that, as I say, we've got Romulus and Remus, but he also found stories, Halden the Black in Norway, he wrote about, which has a very similar thing where the king is on some ice and so is a cow, and the cow basically poops on the ice and melts the ice, and the king falls through the ice and dies. A bit of an odd way to go. Yes, to his death. But anyway, so his body, the dead king, is split into four, buried, and Norway is united under a new king. Then in Iran, you get Cambyses, who's the last son of Cyrus the Great, and he kills the Apsis bull when he's sort of in a fit of rage. And I think the name of that is something like bull, or anyway, and he dies, and in the same way as he kills the bull, and after that, I believe the empire is changed. And there's another story in Iran where Gautama is a priest who claims royal blood, and he usurps the throne, and his name means bull-sized as well. And he is slain by Darius I, and then Darius becomes king, and how Darius becomes great in everything. And there's another story about Alexander the Great. It's a very similar thing, where Alexander actually burns the Avestas, the sacred books, which are written on ox skin. So not cows, but they're different, and they're spread around. And basically, Darius III gets killed, and Hellenistic Greek comes along and changes the world. So, in effect, we're seeing lots of stories that have this pattern, this underlying pattern. So it isn't maybe that the Indo-Europeans created this story and it spread about. It may just been a general story told about kings and priests and cattle. Okay. Now, let me tell you one last story and see if you recognize it.
Okay.
Now, it shares features, but it isn't precise. It's complicated. It's problematic. But so think of a story of a man that descends from his nation's first king. So like a priest descending from a king. But he was born and nurtured among animals, maybe cows, but sort of in a stable, maybe. And on reaching maturity, he contests the authority of the priests, claiming to be the king, anointed to the throne. And then he is sacrificed. And then after he is sacrificed, his beliefs are spread out amongst 12 disciples across the world. And the new world comes to being. And in some books, it says he has a twin called Thomas. That, to me, suggests that this Indo-European creation myth is a creation story of new worlds that was generally told by probably early Neolithic agricultural farmers, and was probably significantly influential in the story of a chap called Jesus.
Yeah, I could see what you're saying. I mean, think about it. Him dressed in royal garb as he's about to be killed. We see this in ancient Babylonian, and like you talked about some of these older, deeper traditions that come from way back. I don't want to take us off of this. Do you have anything else you want to say about that? Because I want to take us back to the beginning.
I'm just saying there's the stories we tell.
Yeah.
It may look like they're similar and rooted in certain things, but some of them are older and more common than we know. We just don't recognize them because they've changed a lot. From the creation myth of the Ymir, which ends up in Greece, the creation myth of the Proto-Indo-Europeans that ends up in the Bible. The Ymir is a start of Genesis. You've got the cow and the king and the priest that could be representative of Jesus. I love mythology and I love these stories, and I'm just to share them, Derek.
I love that. No. That's why I love you so much, man. Like when I met you, I came across your channel. Actually, it was small at the time. You were interviewing Richard Carrier, and I was like, okay, let me see how this went. It was a great episode, and I was like, I like this guy, and I reached out, and we interviewed, and then you blew up out of nowhere. You just started blowing up. You had some really good documentary videos that you put out that people were really into. And then we had so much in common. We just stayed connected over these years. And every time we talk, there's always story time. I love that. Now, I want to go back to something you passed over. And I don't know if you did this because you said you were passing over. You mentioned it. Okay. It wasn't like you don't know. You knew, but you passed over. But I need to ask you further questions. And we have to be careful on YouTube because it seemed like the reason you did it is that it may have had some language involved in describing the events that we today might go, that's not YouTube friendly. So let's be careful as we tread if it is. But when you talked about the cow and the giant at the beginning and the licking of the ice, and then things happen, you go, I can't really get into those things.
Yeah, like the breeding and multiplicity of life.
Okay, so a lot of sexual activities.
Yes, but there's some that represent say that Ymir, this giant, this androgynous giant, so he's often considered male and female, rubs himself. Some say comes out of his armpits, some out of his legs, some out of his head, but that's where extra gods come from.
So in a sense, it's birthing people from different body part, from different areas of its body.
Potentially, yes.
Potentially. Okay. And the reason I asked that is because while you were doing that, I quickly was recalling a story from Ovid. Now, the Roman author, of course, Ovid, is describing this in Fasti. It's to get the exact source, Ovid's Fasti 5. I remember reading this because there's a story that Ovid gives in his Metamorphosis about Philemon and Bacchus. But in this one, this story specifically is actually engaging the story of Hyreus, if I'm pronouncing it right, and the miraculous birth of Orion. So if you look for Boeotian Orion in the middle of these 3 days, remember the Fasti is a calendar. He's writing like a calendral myth that tells you about the calendar and whatnot. He says, you will be disappointed. The middle of these 3 days, you'll be disappointed. I must now sing of the cause of the constellation. Jupiter and his brothers. Now, this is the story. And his brothers who reigns in the deep sea, and Mercury were journeying together. It was the time when the yoked kine draw home the upturned plow. This English translation is a little rougher to read, but anyway. And the lamb and the lamb lies down and drinks the milk of the full ewe.
Mhm.
Is that how you say that? Ewe? E-W-E?
I'm just you.
Ewe. Okay. So you're already getting lamb and cows.
It means cow, to be honest. It's just a mistranslation, I would guess.
Okay. An old man, Hyreus, who cultivated a tiny farm, here we are with an agricultural narrative, chanced to see them as he stood before his little cottage, and thus he spoke. Quote, long is the way, but short the hours of daylight left, and my door is open to strangers. Hospitality. So here we are with the same motifs that you're describing. He enforced his words by a look and again invited them. There are 3 people. They accepted the offer and dissembled their divinity. So they're 3 gods. They passed beneath the old man's roof, begrimed with black smoke. A little fire was glimmering in the log of yesterday. He knelt and blew up the flames with his breath, and drawing forth the stumps of torches, he chopped them up. 2 pipkins stood on the fire. The lesser contained beans and the other kitchen herbs. Both boiled, each under the pressure of its lid. While he waited, he served out red wine with shaky hand. The god of the sea received the first cup. I think Poseidon's with them, by the way. Jupiter and his brothers. Yeah, so who reigns the deep sea. So Poseidon, Jupiter, and Mercury. All right. When he had drained it, now serve the drink, said he to Jupiter in order. At the word, Jupiter the old man pelled. When he recovered himself, he sacrificed the ox that plowed his poor land, and he roasted it in a great fire. And the wine which a boy he had laid up in his early years, he brought forth stored in its smoky jar. And straightway they reclined on the mattress stuffed with the river sedge and covered with linen, but lowly still. The table shone, now with veins, now with the wine set down on it. The bowl was of red earthenware. The cups were beechen wood. Quote Jupiter, if thou hast any fancy, choose. I think he's just saying, like, whatever you want, ask for it.
Exactly.
All will be thine. The clam old man thus spoke. I had a dear wife, whose love I won in the flower of early youth. Where is she now, you ask? The urn her ashes holds. To her I swore and called you gods to witness, thou shalt be my only spouse. I gave my word and I keep it, but a different wish is mine. I would be not a husband, but a father. So he wants a child. And the gods assented. All took their stand at the bullock's hide. I am ashamed to describe what followed. This right here, in the translations I've read, says stuff like, I'm ashamed, or he'll say, shame forbids me to tell the rest. Then they covered the dripping hide with earth. So it says, then they covered the reeking hide by throwing earth on it. When 10 months had passed, a boy was born. So the gods are doing something, they're clearly ejaculating or something. Yes. And I kind of wondered if that was what you were hinting at when you were trying to.
Oh, right. So what you mean now, bodies? Not quite, but I mean, what you got here, you just got a collection of various motifs together, and some of them are analog. But we see different cultures present that in different way. I mean, the other one I'm surprised you didn't shout out is Osiris, and so Osiris is split into multiple pieces. Isis gets a head chopped off, replaced with a cow's head.
Huh?
Is that?
Huh.
You get this story of.
Isn't it? Well, hold on. This is an important point, because Herodotus identifies Io with Isis. Io is the virgin cow. The virgin. It's literally the virgin.
It's known as a cow, because of the cow's head. But in the story, some of the versions. So I think it's actually in Herodotus's version, or Herodotus's. You
and me pronounce it a little,
Yeah. I'll get beaten up by people who pronounce Greek properly if I don't. But she had a normal head and it was chopped off and replaced with a cow's head. But that's after Osiris was split up into many pieces. You see these constant motifs again and again and again, and yet it's hidden in plain sight, literally in all our major myths about how new worlds were created, how new orders were created. And it's something I really would like to investigate more. But
yeah,
you're the first to really hear my views on this at the moment. So there you go.
I love it though. Yeah. I love what you're saying. I just thought I'd bring up that one because, one can point out now, why would he be ashamed of saying this? Well, I just did a debunk video against Wes Huff and the nonsense that he spewed. And like the fact that he clearly doesn't read sources. He's not reading this shit. I mean, like I'm reading this. I'm not pretending that I'm reading the primary source in the original language. I am reading scholarly translations and trying to find the sources, but he's not reading at all. And he got asked a question on a recent show about virgin births, and like Horus and Jesus. And I'm like, clearly this guy's not reading, because if he did, he would probably say, well, I think there's plenty of parallels, but I don't think that they, influence Jesus or something, like the guy clearly doesn't know. Well, I was reading about this and finding out that the closer you get to the first century, due to a lot of the philosophy and the schools that are out there, you'll find that more educated writers are telling birth myths, birth legends, without gods sexually procreating. They're ashamed of Zeus actually sleeping with the girl or whatever, you know what I mean? So they tell a story where the god touches with his hand. Apaphos, the god Apaphos means the one to touch. Or light coming from heaven. No sexual union is involved in some of these myths. And M. David Litwell highlighted that even in Plato, the school of Plato saw him as divine. I mean, there's different degrees of divinity, of course. It's not like we think anachronistically, but they had a birth narrative for him, but they can't have the god have sex, because Plato's own philosophy is gods can't have passions. So how's our man coming from the gods and yet isn't coming from the gods, literally? So they found a way to tell his birth narrative without sexual union, just like Jesus. Exactly.
That's a metaphor, yes.
Yeah, and I had to cover that because a lot of people don't know the reason why virgin birth is even a thing by the time you read the Gospels. Like I'm talking like they're allergic to sex with gods.
It's only one gospel mentions it anyway, I think, isn't it? In the virgin birth.
Matthew. And Luke uses two terms Plutarch uses when describing the birth of Plato. Didymus,
Greek Plutarch.
Greek Plutarch.
Greek Matthew, you borrowed the Greek Plutarch. Just checking.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if they borrowed from it or not. It might just be common language to describing the birth. I'm just saying, like, the fact that there are two terms, dynamis and pneuma, which is spirit, and dynamis means power in Greek. And dynamis and pneuma are used to describe the birth of Plato in Plutarch, in his depiction of the birth narrative of Plato, which is non-sexual, by the way. His mother births him, and you get this in Luke. The dynamis and the pneuma overshadow her, and she gets birth. Now Matthew, it literally calls her a virgin. Luke doesn't call her a virgin. Matthew does. But the reason there's this desexualized birth narrative, according to M. David Litwell, is that philosophers and their thoughts, the Platonists and the Stoics and whatnot, have influenced people into saying, listen, the gods can't do these things. So now they're telling stories where they're demythologizing the sex part, and that's why when you read Augustus's birth in Suetonius, you'll get this. It's a half demythol. There's hints, but they don't tell you what happened because they don't want to mention the gods having sex. So the night that the wife has a snake slither up to her, it says it slither up to her and then it left. That's it. It doesn't say anything else. Now you could read between the lines because that the Apollo's done this 1,000 times and he slept with all the women that he slithered up to. But in this one, they don't narrate it intentionally, I think, to try and demythologize.
It's performed. You have to remember, most of these stories would be performed when told. People didn't read books like that.
Well,
so the performance would show a snake.
Yeah.
And it'd be obvious what the snake has done.
Yeah, I'm specifically this Suetonius is writing his history of the Caesars. So
he's writing it as a history. Okay.
yeah, that's a history. But
Okay, yeah.
you're right. Like it's everywhere. It's in the plays. Like I imagine they probably had some kind of snake kind of act, where it comes up. That's Apollo, and he's impregnating her, but there's no sex scene. But it hints at it because right after he leaves, it says she went off to wash herself, to purify herself. The terms purify, as though she had laid with her husband, but she didn't. So you get the hints of the sex there. There's no sex though. And so I just think that's really interesting because you're talking about the creation myth. Clearly, when this story was floating around, they probably didn't give a shit. They're not like worried about.
Yeah, it's hard to tell because these stories were written by Christians of 200 or 300 years after the stories were being told. So there's a bit of adjustment there. But yeah, so yeah, about that, the androgynous giant is strange. I mean, there is another story I haven't told you about, which is aligned, which is Persephone, who copulates with a bull and gives birth to a Minotaur. In the Minotaur story, you have Minos, the king, and his brother, I think, is a judge, not quite a priest. And Minos, which you could argue may be cognate with Manu, sacrifices the bull to Poseidon. Theseus kills the Minotaur as well. And then, so kingship gives way to democracy in Athens. So, in effect, Athens is freed from creation control. So you have this story of sort of twins and a bull and all that happening. It's everywhere. It's everywhere.
Yeah.
Someone should document this and write a book about it because I think it's a very influential story.
Yeah, that's wow. Okay, couple more super chats, and then we have to let John go. It's late there. What time is it?
Coming up to 11 o'clock at night.
Okay, so it's getting late. I want to let you unwind. I know you like to unwind at night.
Mm-hmm.
P Fletcher NWO, thank you for the super chat. Jupiter sounds like Yule. You Pater, all father.
Jupiter and Deus are the same thing. Not all father, because I'm thinking like Odin that as the all father, but no. So they just sound similar, but sometimes things that sound similar aren't similar.
Okay.
So yeah.
Thank you, Fletcher. Appreciate that. And then Mr. Anderson in the house. Thank you. Good to see you, by the way. John places the lamb as slain from the foundation of the world in the book of Revelation, Revelation 13:8, tying to Revelation 5:6. He even gives a hint saying, if you have an ear, hear. I'm trying to think, Mr. Anderson, what's your point? I'm looking for if you could do a follow-up comment. I really appreciate the super chat.
The dead lamb is the foundation of the world. So in effect, he's saying that sacrificing a lamb to create the world in the book of Revelation.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know if that it's saying it was slain from the foundation. Which
isn't the lamb a representation of Jesus? Isn't it? It's like Jesus' sacrifice. So it's to me, it's more of a metaphor of Jesus's life.
Yes.
Creation.
If you take the way you looked at it with the cow at the beginning, or the sacrifice of the giant, or whatever it might be, if someone were reading this thinking that Jesus, you got to connect a few dots here, so just bear with me. But Jesus is the Logos, right? And the Logos, the word from the beginning. Okay, let's imagine God's going to create the earth. And there's this lamb that's slain from the beginning of the world to create the world. Then if you're reading Revelation that way, okay, I've never heard, just like Tiamat, Mr. Anderson. Yes, just like Tiamat. So imagine Jesus like Tiamat. He becomes what's sacrificed that creates the world.
Which is my point with Jesus, which is the Jesus myth is the same as the Tiamat myth, same as the Proto-Indo-European creation myth.
Right.
It is all the same story.
So my only thing is about this verse, and I mean, I'm happy to entertain any of these interpretations if they make sense. I've always understood this as a predestination. Like God knew from the beginning of the world, he would sacrifice his lamb, and that was going to become the crucifixion of Jesus. But it is interesting. it's a weird phrase. If you don't read it as predestination and you just read it like you just read Tiamat or you read the cow creation myths or whatever, you're going to think to yourself, like, was he the reason the world was even able to be created in the mind of this author? I don't know. I need to go read the surrounding verses too to get context to kind of wrap my head around what.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that is more of a reflection of Jesus's life. But say you just out of context in a way. But the death of Jesus is like the death of Ymir or Tiamat.
Yeah.
Which is really odd to think about if you look at it like that. But then you have to think, how flexible are we being in similarity at this point? Are we just seeing the pattern because we're humans and we love seeing patterns? Or actually, is there a thing going on there?
It's a good question. Let me pull up our Bible real quick. And if anybody's looking to check a good Bible website, crossbible.com, my buddy Steven, go check him out. Go show him some love. You can even become a member. I'm literally the max you can be. So I have access of all the tools. There's all sorts of cool stuff here. Let's go to Revelation. Easy to find. Last book in the Bible. It's all the way down. And we're going to Revelation 13. And I don't care for the NIV. I go with the NRSV. So let's go to 13:8. So here we go. Let's see. Saints conquer them. They worship the dragon. I mean, look, in the same context, you have a freaking dragon, John. Like a few verses before, they worship the dragon, for he had given authority to the beast, which a lot of people believe this beast is the land beast. So you have the dragon, which is Leviathan, likely, and then you have Behemoth, which is the land beast. So you have this massive behemoth, and they worship the beast, saying, "Who is like the beast? Who can fight against it?" The beast was given a mouth, speaking arrogant and blasphemous words. Here's the bad, naughty beast and the dragon. Bad, naughty dragon, and it was allowed to exercise authority for 42 months. It opens its mouth to speak blasphemies against God, blaspheming his name and his dwelling, that is, those who dwell in heaven. Also, it was allowed to wage war on the saints and to conquer them. It was given authority over every tribe and people and language and nation. I think this is talking about Rome, but it's still using mythology to tell the story. And all the inhabitants of the earth will worship it, everyone whose name has not been written from the foundation of the world in the book of life of the Lamb that was slaughtered. So the way this English translates it isn't the same way that I've read it before, which is how Mr. Anderson puts it. Anyway, yeah, so there's a lot going on here, but it goes again. Here's a few verses later. Then I saw another beast that rose out of the earth. It had two horns like a lamb, and it spoke like a dragon. So lots of dragons going on in this chapter, and we were just dealing with dragons.
Be interesting to see the word they're translating into dragon and taking it into Greek, and whether that really means dragon or something, another beast. Or
that's a good point. I would imagine it's dragon. I mean, I don't know any translators that don't put it as dragon, from my understanding. He also has a Greek, but I can't read the Greek. I could pull it up if you wanted to identify any of the text, but you're not a Greek guy, right?
Not overly Greek, no.
Yeah, I've got to get I want to learn some basics at some point, but I mean, I know some of the letters clearly. I got to get the words. I want to start getting, like, actually understanding a little bit of this so I can navigate this material better. My buddy Nil's been encouraging me, and so has Steven, the guy who owns this website, is the one who has been teaching me the little that I do know about Greek. Interesting observations, Mr. Anderson. I don't know what to do with it. It's something worth looking into, but again, my understanding was simply this could be predestination. But when I read it in this version, it didn't even sound like it was predestined. It was just saying he was slain, for the people who died, for the Lamb who was slain, and that's it. So translations, what do you do?
Well, that's the problem with translations, interpretations.
Look, everybody watching, if you want to really be saved from the dragon that will come, go subscribe to my buddy John. Seriously, putting it in the chat, Crecganford YouTube channel. Go comment on his videos and say, MythVision sent me, loved your live stream, whatever. That stuff is very encouraging. When we wake up in the morning, and as content creators, when you do this often, it's very encouraging to see positive feedback, not negative. It's encouraging to see that when you wake up in the morning with your cup of tea or my cup of coffee, something to keep us going. And your website, folkloredatabase.com.
Yeah, absolutely.
Any final plugs or mentions or things you'd like to say?
Not really. It's always a pleasure to speak to you, Derek. As I say, we've known each other a long time and supported each other where we can, and it's always a pleasure to speak to you. I love what you do. I've seen you've grown. Yeah, it's just amazing. So you're on a journey and you're doing well.
Thank you. Well, here's to more growing, to more friendships, to a long, successful time of learning ourselves and helping others to have passion and desire to learn as well, bringing good education to everybody. And let's do this again, man.
Absolutely, Derek. Absolutely. It's been a pleasure. Hope your community liked what we talked about and enjoyed it and learned something new.
Oh my gosh. I always learn something new. You've read a lot, so you can tell, like, you're trying to give us, without getting too bogged down into all the weeds and everything, the best you can. But I hope that more people will take this and be encouraged to read material. By the way, recommendations on your part. Do you have certain books? I'm sure you have a reading list that you recommend somewhere, right?
You sort of, it depends, because there's so many different cultures. It's really hard to recommend one book. There's the only two real books I'd recommend at the moment. One is Puvel's Comparative Mythology. The other is Witzel's The World's Oldest Mythologies.
Hold on. So what's it called? The first one?
Puvel, Puhvel, Comparative Mythology. And yes, it's quite cheap. And the other one is Witzel's The Origins of the World's Mythologies. Quite a tome.
How do you spell that? Oh, here, let me make you full screen here real quick. Let me look at this here. The Origins of the World's Mythologies.
By Witzel, who does Vedic studies at Harvard. But hopefully, within the next 12 months, there will be a book by Jon F White on the world's oldest stories.
I'd like that. I would really like that.
I'm trying hard to get that done. But that's, to me, it will be a book for the layperson, but there'll be references all the way through it for anyone who wants to do deep dives. It's coming along nicely, just a little slower than I want. Yeah, so those two books are a start for 10. But come along, watch my videos, ask questions. I try to reply to all sensible comments. If you don't leave a sensible comment, I'll use a British insult on you, and you probably won't even realise it. I have a great community on Patreon and YouTube members, absolutely brilliant. So yeah, it's that's what I recommend. Yeah, and use the folklore database as it's used by many academics, universities. It's a solid piece of work and really will help authors, storytellers, and the people researching narratives. So,
absolutely. Yeah. And by the way, we got a member who just showed up, David Carr. Thank you for becoming a YouTube member. We really appreciate that. You'll get early access to anything we launch that's early on the channel, and you get a special symbol next to your name that makes you a very important person in the comment section. I really appreciate that. Thank you for joining. And yeah, I encourage everybody who want to help us out. We could use it. I mean, Patreon is like month to month. You just get people who drop and come and drop. And it's like some months are really, really low. It's like, okay, well, help support us because we could use it. This is not just, I'm not just an average YouTuber. And I thought about this the other day. And based on our previous episodes that we've done, John, there are tons of YouTubers who just YouTube. There aren't many who are like full-blown educational channels that are actually providing you with a resource, that are doing the hard work, that are digging deep into the resources. You're more than happy to go like follow the drama channels and hype into that. I dabble in it for clicks, for views. I'm not going to bullshit anybody. Like, it's what sells. It's what they prefer. People would rather watch, like, I've got a video coming right now, and I didn't fill you in on this, John, but like I kind of touched on it. Two Christian apologists go at it. David Wood, for those who've watched, and this other guy, Andrew Wilson, like 100,000 views in 8 to 10 hours because it was drama.
Well,
And it's like, if we could only get that for like real stuff, right? That'd be fantastic. But people prefer Jerry Springer over, the real stuff. And I'm saying, if you really want this stuff to not disappear, and I mean it, because this can happen, channels like ours can go away. If for you, you're not in the same financial bind I'm in.
I do it for fun. I love what I do. It's just my life. You got family and a house and a mortgage. You have to produce the best work, and people need to support that.
Yeah, I just encourage everybody to get behind, if you can, get behind the work, to help keep these things going. That's all I'm saying. So trust me, Fenris, I've got something coming. And look, I don't really care to defend either guy, but I definitely think there was a whole bunch of sophistry that happened in that episode. And I'm calling out both sides, but I still think like it's crazy. It's just crazy. So anyway, I'm doing what I can, bro, to keep this thing going and trying to help people take serious diving into the primary sources and doing this more and more. So
just remember, Jesus was either a cow or a dragon originally. That's what we're concluding today.
That's what we're walking away with. Jesus was.
And if people aren't arguing about that, then I'm disappointed, Derek.
We've got to change the culture. People need to start understanding the dragon Jesus. I mean, come on. Or better yet, let's keep him the dragon. I like the cows way too much, man. Like the bulls are amazing. Seriously, man, appreciate you. Thank you so much. Let's do this again.
Yeah, always. And hopefully I'll be able to see you again soon. When my book is written, I'll come over with a copy for you.
Come on over, bro. We got the place. Let's record. Let's have some fun. All right, ladies and gentlemen, like the video. Please share this bad boy out there. Help support what we're doing. Become a member, become a patron. You can go buy a course from my wife at mvp-courses.com, academic courses, and never forget, we are MythVision.
Son, do you want to know what the truth is? After this, there's no turning back. You take the blue pill and you wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to. You take the red pill and you stay in Wonderland, and I show you just how deep the rabbit hole goes. Remember, all I'm offering is the truth, nothing more.